Today, of course, as you are all aware, we are going to be discussing zakat. We'll be discussing the Sharia perspectives on zakat calculation, as well as some of the practical perspectives on zakat collection and zakat distribution. We have two very esteemed speakers with us today that we are very honored to introduce. Um, so. Uh, I'll begin with our first speaker, Sheikh Mohamad Mishal. We'll jump right in. So just to give a bit of a background on to who he is, but Sheikh Mohamad Mishal is the head of the Sharia department at Adl Advisory. He holds a double major in law and Sharia from the International Islamic University of Malaysia, IIUM. Furthering his academic career, he holds a master's degree in Islamic finance from INSEF University. And also, he is an AOFI certified Sharia advisor and Sharia auditor. He holds a CSAA certification. Sheikh Mohamad Mishal has worked with clients across diverse regions of the world. His expertise spans from Islamic finance research, product structuring, training for public officials, practitioners, and students. He covers the AOFI Sharia standards as well as comprehensive courses on Sharia governance, Islamic social finance, Islamic finance, and business ethics. Today, Sheikh Mohamad Mishal will be sharing with us everything we need to know about zakat calculation, the Sharia aspects of zakat, especially in these modern times where uh, assets and things have evolved to such an extent that maybe the way that we used to calculate zakat it's not as straightforward as it used to be. So we need your guidance, and without further ado, please take the floor. The floor is yours, Sheikh Mohamad Mishal. Jazakumullah khair.
وإياكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاك الله خير Sheikh Adil for the lovely introduction. I'm also happy to share this platform with Sheikh Zahid Mateen. It's been a while. Without further ado, inshallah, I'll start right away with the course. The subject of zakah is a sensitive subject, and it's not. It requires some practical knowledge beside the theoretical knowledge. And inshallah, in this presentation, I'll try, with the limited time, I'll try as much as possible to cover the main aspects in zakat calculation. And the way that I prepared the session is that we will go through from an individual perspective, and then from that perspective, we will transition into a company or corporate perspective. So even when we talk about individual perspective, that doesn't exclude your investments. So whatever kind of investments you have, it will be covered under the first part, which is individual perspective. And then when we transition into the corporate perspective, it will be very much simpler than doing the other way around. I'm not sure how long do I have. I think about 1 hour or so. However, it depends on Sheikh Adil. Let me know if I have like 10 minutes left, so I can manage the remaining time. Right. Bismillah. Okay. So these are the main references for the webinar. So everyone knows the first and top one is AOFI Sharia standard number 35 on zakah, and then the guidelines for calculating corporate zakah 2024 by Kuwait Zakah House. This reference is especially it's more detailed than the AOFI Sharia standards. Many of the rulings are similar to AOFI Sharia standards. However, they have some differences. The difference, also one of the main differences that you should know about how these two references are prepared is that the second reference is prepared based on multiple conferences that has been taking place for the past 20 to 30 years. And this guideline is updated from time to time. And this is the 7th version. So in terms of update and research, the second reference is more updated. However, uh, I mean, we as AOFI certified and people who adhere to AOFI, one of the amazing things that you would find is that even though there were many updates to the guidelines prepared by Kuwait Zakah House, the majority of the rulings, 95% of the rulings are still similar to AOFI Sharia standard number 35. The last one is a useful summary. It's an Arabic book. It's called Useful Summary. I forgot the Arabic title, but you can translate it and get it by Sheikh Ali Al-Kulayb. It's very concise, and it's the explanation is simple, and it's referenced. So he references whatever ruling that he puts. So one of the easiest materials that you can find on contemporary issues in zakah is this one, the last one. And this presentation is based on these three references. طيب, how can we amplify the reward of zakah? This is just an introduction and something that I've heard many years ago from Sheikh Sha'rawi. And it's a way that changes your mindset in a way that would, inshallah, amplify your reward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Mu'minun, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون. And these 10 verses, the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever adheres to these 10 verses, he will enter Jannah. And the fourth verse, as you can see, the one in red, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. Now, the translation is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes believers in these 10 verses. And one of the attributes of these believers is that they are doers of zakah, not payers of zakah. So the Sheikh Sharawi, when he was interpreting his this ayah, he said that this means that it's not just that they wait for the whole, they wait till the time of zakah payment and they pay zakah. No, they have the intention of earning enough property and wealth so they can pay zakah in the future. So they do zakah. They, from the beginning of the year, they have in their mind the end goal, which is to be able or to be enabled to pay charity, to pay zakah, and to contribute to the society and to these asnaf. The guiding principles of zakah, we'll move now a bit more technical. However, we'll start with the Sharia basis, the major Sharia basis, which is أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم خذ من أموالهم صدقة تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها. من أموالهم, the word أموالهم in Arabic means their property. And in Arabic we have alfaz, we have words that are general. General means that it covers everything. So, and one of them is that when you add مضاف ومضاف إليه, I mean, this is the when you add one word to can Adl, if you can help, مضاف ومضاف إليه. I'm not sure what's the
possessive pronouns.
It is what?
Possessive pronoun.
Possessive pronouns.
Like,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, you can go ahead. You want to explain
Well,
further?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like when something belongs to something else, you use a possessive pronoun. In English, it would be the same as their wealth, his wealth, her wealth, etc.
100%. So these kind of words are called general. So when we say أموالهم, it means that their property, it covers all of their property. So the ruling of zakah applies to all properties. Now, this is the ruling from Usul Fiqh. Now, what is excluded needs a second dalil, a second evidence, it needs a separate basis that will exclude some of your property from being subject to zakah. So the general ruling is that whatever property you have to pay zakah on this property. However, we will see the exclusions as we go through this presentation. The requirements or the conditions or the preconditions for paying zakah are these one. I'll go through them quickly, and I'll just stop to explain some of the concepts. Islam, you have to be Muslim to pay zakah. How about corporates? corporates actually don't pay zakah as a legal person. They pay zakah on behalf of shareholders. So if shareholders are Muslims, then they have to pay zakah either through the corporate or separately. How do corporate pay zakah themselves? It's either through if the law demands that, such as in Saudi Arabia, if they're in their article of association, they mention that they pay zakah, or thirdly, if they have a general assembly, and in that general assembly they have a resolution to pay zakah for this year. So this is how corporates pay zakah. However, they pay on behalf of shareholders. Firm ownership. Firm ownership means that whatever you own, the property you own, you have control over it, and this ownership is not revocable. I will not dive deeper into what is irrevocable because we will see examples and it will be simpler to understand. Productive, something that produces either actual produce such as livestock or agricultural produce, or constructive production such as gold, silver, or currencies, or assets held for trade, because these ones generate profit, and this is considered as constructive nama, or increase. Thirdly, nisab for livestock and agricultural produce is different. We will not be covering agricultural produces and livestock at all in this session. We will just focus on gold, silver, currencies, and assets held for trade. So the nisab is the threshold where if the value of your property reaches that threshold, then you have to pay zakah. If it's below that threshold, then you don't have to pay zakah. And that threshold is 85 grams of pure gold, 24 karat gold. And for example, I mean, throughout this presentation, the example is that this is worth $6,000 because this will be useful for us in doing some of the exercises. Lastly, al-hawl is the passage of time after which zakah become obligatory on you. And this is also applicable to the third and fourth type of properties, which is gold, silver, currencies, and assets held for trade. And it is generally a lunar year. However, if it's impractical for some reasons, and the main example is that because the financial statements or reports are not ready or are not prepared according to lunar year, they are prepared according to the solar year. In this case, we have to adjust the rate. The rate of the zakah is 2.5%. However, if we're paying zakah on a different date, which is, as we mentioned, based on the solar year, then the rate would be 2.5775. And the formula generally is that in case it was more or less than the solar year for some reasons, because you just established the company, or so it would be the number of days for that financial statement times 2.5 divided by 354, which is the number of days for the lunar year. Tamam. I tried to create or to write a principle that would help us remember and apply these 5 preconditions or prerequisites for zakah in one sentence. It's a productive property reached nisab, owned for a hawl by a Muslim. And you don't have to remember that, but we will be using it in our examples, as you will see in the coming slides. So what do we expect to learn from this presentation? Is to pay zakah, you need to know what you own, what to include and exclude in your zakah calculation, and at what value, and then what do you need to deduct or not deduct from your property or from your liabilities, and at what value. So this is, simply what is the expected outcome from this webinar. 3 common assets that are subject to zakah. The 3 common assets are items for sale, currencies, and receivables. And through the presentation, we will start with currencies, then items for sales, and then receivables. We will see what are the principles that apply to each of them in zakah calculation, and then we will move to payables and what kind of payables are deductible from the zakah assets. And then after that, we will reach to the net zakah or net zakatable assets. What about investments? If you own a security, which is a financial instrument, then zakah depends on your strategy. Is it to hold that security or trade it? If your strategy is to trade that security, is to actively trade it during the financial year, then it falls under items for sale. And the zakah would then be payable on the market price of the instrument. If your strategy is to hold that security, you're investing for the long term, then we need to assess what are what this instrument, what does that security represent? What are the underlying assets of this security? And then once you understand the underlying assets of these securities, you will apply the principles that we will learn on these four categories or four items. This is if you hold the security. The method is called net zakatable assets, and it's the method that IOFI uses. For impermissible investments, zakah is payable on investment amount, and any excess should be donated. So whatever if you invest in an impermissible shares, impermissible, let's say if you invest in bonds, on treasury bills that are impermissible, if you invest in unit trusts that are impermissible, so you pay zakah on the invested amount, and any excess or any profit that you earn, you will donate it, or you have to donate it because it is impermissible. Okay, as I mentioned, we will discuss the net zakatable assets method towards the end of the presentation. We will start from individual perspective and then move or transition to corporate perspective. So throughout this presentation, what I'll try to do is to give examples, and then based on these examples, we will apply the principles that we've learned, and we will learn new principles. So Zaid owns 2,000 shares in QDR company. He actively trades them. The market price for the shares is 10,000. The company hasn't paid zakah, and it is a halal stock. How much is the zakah? It's 10,000. The market price times 2.5, 250. Or another method is 10,000 divided by 40, 250 as well. And this is the principle. It's a productive property because you earn dividend. I mean, you earn capital gain in this case, because you aim to sell it when the price rises. Reached nisab, it's more than $6,000 owned. We don't have any problem with the ownership of these shares. For a whole, this is an assumption by a Muslim, and Zaid is a Muslim. Okay. Zaid owns 2 investment units, so investment units, we apply the same thing. I will not try to be faster, so we can cover as much as we can. Okay, this is sukuk. We apply the same thing based on the market price. Why? Because he actively trades them. So we're only referring to investments that are held for trade, not held for the long term. Okay, Zaid owns 2,000 shares in QBR company. He actively trades them. The market price for the shares is 10,000. Zaid bought the shares for 9,000. The company doesn't pay zakah. The company is a conventional insurance company. The zakah in this case would be on the invested amount, which is 9,000. So first, Zaid must sell the shares. So this is the first obligation Zaid has. Second, Zaid must pay zakah on the 9,000, the invested amount. Third, Zaid must donate the excess 1,000 to charities other than mosques or Quran-related charities. So this is one of the rulings I encountered in the third reference that I mentioned. So this impermissible earnings, you shouldn't donate them to charities that relate to mosques or Quran-related charities. And why is that? Because we have problem with the ownership. The principle is that a Muslim does not own anything that he earned impermissibly. So if a Muslim does not own property if the means to acquire it is impermissible, such as interest. Okay, now we move on to currencies, the first type of assets that we should include in our zakatable assets. So Zaid has 10,000 in cash. He pays 2.5% on that. Zaid has 5,000 in cash. There's no zakah because it didn't reach nisab, which is 6,000. Zaid earned 10,000 on 1st of Ramadan and another 10,000, 20,000 on 10th of Shawwal. Now he has to pay zakah. But there's a new principle here. Should he pay zakah on the 1st of Ramadan or 10th of Shawwal? Or should he pay it separately for each amount? The principle is that he should pay zakah for both of the amounts on the 1st of Ramadan. So the principle is that whatever you earn from, if it falls under currencies, gold, silver, or article of trade, once your haul starts once you reach the nisab, which is 85 grams of gold, the value of 85 grams of gold. Once you reach the nisab, the clock for the haul start ticking. Now, any additional earning afterward is combined with the first is combined with the first amount that you earned that reached nisab. So in this case, Zaid pays zakah on 1st of Ramadan for both of the amounts, 30,000. Additional earnings are combined with the same type of wealth, and this, as I mentioned, includes currencies, gold and silver, receivables, and articles for trade that reached nisab, and follow the whole of the earlier, which is in this case 1st of Ramadan. And then in this example, the only difference is that he inherited 20,000. He didn't earn it as in the first example. He earned both. This one, he inherited 20,000, and that doesn't change the ruling. I mean, just to clarify, he still has to pay 30,000 on the 1st of Ramadan, even if it's inheritance. It doesn't matter how he earns the additional amounts. If it falls under the zakatable assets, it is combined. Now, in this example, he earned 10,000 in the 1st of Ramadan and then inherited 5,000 dinar. On the 10th of Shawwal, the conversion rate is 3 to 1. 3 to 1, I assume. Yeah. So 1 dinar is 3,000 US dollars. So he pays for both of the amounts. He pays for both of the amounts, but the principle is that he has to convert the dinar, the other currencies, to the main currency at the time when the zakat became payable. So it's not at the time when you earned it. It's not at the time when you paid it. It's at the time when it became payable. So it became payable on 1st of Ramadan, and the rate was 3 to 1 on 1st of Ramadan. If he paid it on the 10th of Ramadan and the rate has changed on the 10th of Ramadan, he has to pay it on the rate on the previous rate, on the rate where it was 3 to 1 on the 1st of Ramadan. If he earned it on the 10th of Shawwal, and back then the rate was 2 to 1 or 2.9 to 1, it doesn't change the ruling. He has to pay it on the rate where the zakah became payable, which is 1st of Ramadan. Okay. Okay, Zaid earned 5,000 on the 1st of Ramadan and then inherited 20,000 on 10th of Shawwal. Now, there's a bit of tweak here. He has to pay on 10th of Shawwal, not 1st of Ramadan, because 5,000 is lower than the nisab. He only earned or owned the nisab by 10th of Shawwal, and that's why he has to pay zakah on 10th of Shawwal. Okay, Zaid owns 10. Now we transitioned into a different category. I hope the first one that relates to currencies is clear. I'm not sure. Sheikh Adil, let me know if we need to take a Q&A. I can stop based on your signal. Zaid owns 10 golden coins weighing 300 grams of 24 karat gold. 24 karat gold price gram is $70. So what Zaid has to do is, first, the 300 grams of gold, we take the value of the 300 grams of pure gold, which is 21,000, and then we pay zakah on that 21,000. The principle is that when you pay zakah on gold, we take the price of the 24 gold price per gram. We take the zakah. What's the price that we refer to? Is the price of the 24 karat gold. You'll see why this is important in the second example. In the second example, the 21 karat gold has a different price, definitely. However, it's not proportionate to the 24 karat gold. you need to know the amount of gold, the pure gold in the 21 karat gold, and then calculate it based on the price of the 24 karat gold. Let's see how this is. I mean, we would do this. Find the weight of the pure gold in the 300 grams of 21 karat gold. The way we do it is that we take the caratage value number, and then we divide it by 24, and then multiply it by the weight of the gold that we have. So he has 21 karat gold. We divide it by 24 and then multiply it by 300 grams. It will be 262.5. This is the amount of pure gold that Zaid has in this 300 grams. The only thing is you need to do is that you divide the caratage of the impure gold over 24 and then multiply it by the weight of gold that you own. Now we reach to the amount of pure gold. The rest is easy. We multiply it by the price of the pure gold and then pay Zakat on that. Find the price of the pure gold, 265 times 70. So what we shouldn't do is that we shouldn't take 300 grams and multiply it by 62. This is an incorrect way of calculating Zakat on gold. And then we calculate Zakat on this amount, 18,000 times 2.5, and this is the Zakat amount. Zakat is payable only on the pure amount of gold. And we take the price of the pure gold. We don't take the price of the impure gold. Okay. Now, Zaid owns 10,000 ancient gold coins weighing 300 grams. However, the market price for this gold is 100,000, which is way different from the price of the pure gold that he has. The price of the pure gold is 21,000, and this is what we take again. The only exception is that if Zaid owns this gold for trade, he intends to sell it, then in this case, we take the selling price. If he doesn't intend to sell it, then we take the price of the pure gold, or the amount of pure gold that he has in his possession. Zakat is payable only on the pure amount of gold, regardless of the increase in market price attributed to the way a specific golden item is made, unless such item is meant for trading. Okay, Zaid received 15,000 as an advance annual rent for his car. We transitioned also on a different type of assets, still falls under currencies. So Zaid received 15,000 as an advanced annual rent for his car. What's the Zakat amount? There's no Zakat. Why is that? Because that 15,000, he doesn't fully own them until the duration of the rent expires. So whenever you receive advance for a service or a usufruct, you don't own that amount until that usufruct or service is delivered completely. And the problem is that he doesn't fully own it yet. Advance rent is subject to revocation. Remember, we mentioned that ownership is you must have control over it, and it must be irrevocable. It's subject to revocation until the service or benefit is utilized or expired. Yeah, okay. Okay, Zaid received 10,000 as an advance payment for suits. Now this is different. Zaid is a tailor and he received 10,000 as an advance payment for suits. In this case, the 10,000 is zakatable. It's included because it's not for a service, it's for suits. And for suits, for products, if you receive an advanced amount, you own this advanced amount because it is generally irrevocable. Okay, now we're done with currencies. We move into items for sale or items for trade. In items for trade, the main principle that we should follow is that take the selling price of the item in its current status, because some items, their status changes from time to time, especially items that you manufacture or you you have some input on these items, and then transfer them into a different object. For example, if we're talking about real estate, and the purpose of the real estate that you're developing or constructing is to sell them afterward. So in this case, we take the real estate in their current status, and we take the selling price. We take the selling price of the item. Zaid owns a stock of electronics he sells online. He bought this stock for 2,000. His selling price is 8,000. We take 8,000, the selling price. We take the 8,000, which is the selling price. Secondly, he bought this for 20. He sells them in wholesale for 3,000. However, retailers sell them for 8,000. Now, in this case, we take the selling price for the zakat payer. So, and in this case, it's 3,000. So it's according to the selling price of the zakat payer and according to their current status. Okay. Zaid bought the stock for 2,000. He also bought a storage rack for $200 to organize his stock. The selling price of the electronics is 8,000, and the storage rack is worth 350. The selling price is 350. However, Zaid has to pay zakat only on the 8,000. Why is that? Because he doesn't intend to sell the storage rack. It's for use, it's not for sale. And that's why items held for sale are only subject to zakat. The storage rack, and this would apply to many items in companies or corporates, or even if for individuals, your own house, your own car, all of these things, even things that you have in your store, if you're a merchant, you don't have to pay zakat for all items unless you intend to sell these items. Okay. This is the example of the gold coins again, but in this case, Zaid intends to sell them, so he has to pay zakat on the 100,000 on the selling price, and not the value or the amount of pure gold, or the value of the pure gold in his possession. Okay. Zaid owns a tailor shop. The shop lot is worth 300,000. There's no zakat because he doesn't intend to sell this shop. Sewing machines is worth 2,000. Same principle. No zakat because he doesn't intend to sell them. Zaid owns a tailor shop. In the shop, he has 100 of finished suits. The selling price of all of the suits is 40,000, and it costs Zaid 7,000. He has to pay zakat on the selling price, which is 40,000, not the cost. This is what I'm trying to say. Zaid owns a tailor shop. In the shop, he has rolls of fabric that are used to make clothes, but are not sold as they are. So he doesn't sell the fabric rolls, he sells suits. So the selling price, once the clothes are ready, is 50,000. I mean, once he transforms these fabric rolls into suits, it will be worth 50,000. However, in their current status, the cost of the fabric is 8,000, and this is assumed to be the value of the fabrics in their current status. So he has to pay zakat on the 8,000, not 50,000, because we mentioned that items held for sale subject according to the selling price kabir and according to their current status. So generally, in these situations, we take the cost price. If we're referring to raw materials that will be transformed into finished goods, however, they're not transformed yet, we take the cost of these raw materials. Zaid owns a car worth 40,000. He bought it for 60,000. Anyway, he doesn't intend to sell it. There's no zakat. Zaid owns a car worth 40,000. He doesn't use the car for his personal use. He keeps it for the tailor shop delivery service. That doesn't change, even if it's used for commercial purposes. If it's not intended for sale, there's no zakat. Zaid bought a car from another city to sell it at his hometown for profit. The selling price is 30,000. So he take that amount. However, the car got stolen from him. I mean, the same example, another scenario, the car got stolen from him. Although he intends to sell it, he doesn't have it now in his possession. And because of this, ownership is not fulfilled here. Remember, ownership refers to having control and then uh, um, being irrevocable. When an item is stolen, you don't have control over it, then you don't have complete ownership, and therefore you don't have to pay zakah on this item, on the stolen item. Zaid developed a software to manage his tailor shop orders. The software is worth 35,000. The software, even though it's used for commercial purposes, it's not intended for sale, and therefore it's not subject to zakah. Zaid has in his assets under inventory oil to lubricate the sewing machine. The cost of the oil is 1,000. He doesn't have to pay zakah on the oil. Why is that? Because even though it's a raw material or it's an inventory, it doesn't become part of the finished goods. However, in this example, in his inventory, he has buttons to be used for the suits. The cost of the buttons is $1,000. In this case, he has to pay zakah for the buttons as well as the cash that he has. Why? Because raw materials that become part of the finished goods are included, whereas those that do not are excluded. The ones that do not become part of the finished goods include, for example, gas, include oil, as we mentioned. Okay, we're done. Alhamdulillah. We're done with the second type of assets or category of assets, which is item of sales. We move into the last part, which is receivables.
Sheikh
Okay.
Mishal, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
We just wanted to let you know we have roughly 10 minutes left. So yeah, just keep that in mind, inshallah.
Oh, wallah. Surprise. Okay. Tamam. طيب, the underlying principle or the main principle that we apply to receivables, it's that zakah applies to receivables amounts minus doubtful or impaired amounts and minus interest and minus deferred profit, which is profit attributed to the years after the current year. So let's see if we can take a few examples before time. Zaid has 10,000 due to him from Ziyad. In this case, he pays zakah on it. Okay. So Zaid has 10,000. This is a new principle here. Zaid has 10,000 payable to him, receivables, in other words, from his neighbor Yazid. He gave this loan because Yazid lost his job and he agreed that the date of repayment is after 3 years. The principle is that there is no zakah. What's the principle? This is not in AOFI again. The principle is that if the loan is intended for benevolent purposes and it is deferred, then zakah is payable for 1 year upon receipt. So once Zaid receives that qard hasan, he will pay zakah for 1 year. Okay. Zaid sold to his customer Ziyad suits for 30,000 payable over a period of 3 years. Had Ziyad paid everything on spot, the price would have been 22,500. So the deferred profit here is 7,500. So he has to pay the increase. Okay. So he has to pay 25,000 because 2,500 are for the current year and 5,000 are deferred. So deferred profit is excluded and he has to pay zakah only on 25,000 of this receivable amount. Okay. Okay, for doubtful or impaired loans, let's say that for some reason the loan become doubtful, then you don't have to pay zakah on this amount. It will be deducted. However, once you receive it, you have to pay zakah for 1 year. Okay, see, zakah is payable upon receiving doubtful impaired debt on the amount received, regardless of the period it stayed impaired. So stayed impaired in this example for 3 years. And then Ziyad, his situation became better and paid back the 10,000. Then in this case, you pay 10,000 at the time of receipt, not at the time of your haul. Even if your haul is on 1st of Ramadan, but you received this on the 12th of Sha'ban, you pay it immediately. Okay, so interest is excluded because you have to donate it. You pay zakah on the amount, and then whatever interest you have to donate. I'm trying to be faster than. Okay, this is related to service gratuity, which is you receive it upon retirement, and this one, no zakah, but upon receipt, the amount will be combined with other assets. You don't have to pay zakah on that. Okay. Okay, you pay something in advance, and then you have a debt of an asset. If that asset is intended for sale, then you have to pay zakah on the price that you have paid. If that asset is not intended for sale, then you don't have to pay zakah for this asset receivable. Okay, same principle. Okay, deposits. Let's see the principle instead of the example. If a deposit is required by law or by contract, and such deposit is locked for a long period, and it is not invested, in this case, it is zakatable only for 1 year upon withdrawal. So that happens when you enter into a contract, or for example, you enter into a service such as electricity or even internet, for example, in Malaysia, you have to pay a deposit. Now that deposit is still something that you own, but you don't have to pay zakah for it because you don't have control over it, and you can't invest it. It's not invested. It doesn't earn you any profit. However, once you receive it, let's say when you graduate and you want to leave, or you want to leave the country, or you want to switch service providers, in this case, once you receive it, you have to pay zakah for 1 year. So this is a kind of deposit. Once you understand the concept, it applies to even when we talk about financial institutions. They have to deposit large sum of money with the central authority to ensure stability in the market. So for such deposits, you don't have to pay zakah until you receive that deposit, and you have to pay zakah then for 1 year upon withdrawal. Okay, now we move on to payables. Payables deduct all the principles that you have to, or you should deduct all payables that are incurred to acquire zakatable assets. What are the zakatable assets? These assets, in the way that we describe them, and we apply different principles to them. So whatever payables, whatever loans or debts or liabilities that you have, you can deduct that from the amount, from the sum or the value of the zakatable assets here, provided that the payables are incurred to acquire zakatable assets. And this is especially applied to long-term loans. For short-term loans, or for short-term liabilities, you can deduct all of them. But for long-term liabilities, you only deduct these payables if they are incurred to acquire zakatable assets, and you remove deferred profit from them. Okay, they total zakatable assets are 200,000, and he owes to Zain 50,000. This year incurred as a price for the car used for his personal matter. 2,000 times. Okay, this is actually inaccurate. As you mentioned, this is because it's payable for this year. It's not long term, so it will be deductible. This is something that this is a mistake, because this is short term. This is now. This is payable now, or this year, or this year. Okay, now the total zakatable assets 200,000. He owes 10,000 to the supplier. We will deduct that 10,000 from his zakatable assets. Okay, 1,000 of the loan amount is payment of interest. He incurs a loan, and 1,000 is an interest payment. In this case, we deduct from the zakatable assets only the principal amount, which is 10,000, not including the interest. Why? Because the interest payment is not allowed. It's not a valid debt on you. Okay. Okay, this is okay. We're done with the main principles. We'll just take few additional general principles. Now Zaid has 10,000 in the bank and 500 receivables from Ziyad. Okay, Zaid's zakah is 10,500 times 2.5, which is $262.5. And Ziyad is insolvent. He's one of the categories or asnaf of zakah recipients. Can Zaid relieve Ziyad of $262 from the 500 that Ziyad owns to Zaid as Zaid's payment of zakah, as part of his zakah payment? The answer is no. You can't relieve someone that is indebted to you as part of your zakah payment. Okay, can you pay him your zakah? Can you pay him this amount as your zakah? Yes. Afterward, after you pay the one that is indebted to you, after you pay him zakah, because he's one of the asnaf, can he in return pay you back part of your loan? The answer is yes, but it must not be based on prior arrangement or agreement. Okay. Okay, what about investments? Again, just a refresher. If it's for trade, then we pay zakah on the market price. If it's to hold it, to hold this security for a term that is longer than 1 year, then we need to assess the underlying assets. And for the underlying assets, I'll just breeze through them. For example, we exclude operational fixed assets, such as premises of the institution, equipment. All of these items are excluded because they don't fall under productive assets. They are not currency or gold or silver. They are not items held for trade, and they are not receivables. So similarly, in these slides, I just explain or give examples of some of the items that we find in the financial statements, and we then categorize them based on the principles that we have learned. Okay. How can you know the zakah amount for investments you hold? Okay, for the investment you hold through the company, the best practice is that companies, especially in Muslim countries, they should announce the amount of zakah that's payable per share, and then based on that you can calculate. If not, then through dedicated organizations. Some organizations, for example, in Kuwait, they calculate the zakah for the listed companies. So you can refer to these organizations and know your zakah, or through service providers. Sometimes private entities, they offer these services. They will calculate zakah for you, such as Shariah advisors and others. Or you can learn the skill, as we just learn briefly how we can calculate zakah. You can learn the skill, take the financial statements, and based on that, you can calculate the zakah. Or you can, the least that you can do, you can make an informed estimate. How can you make an informed estimate? It's based on your knowledge of the company and your knowledge on other similar companies or similar companies in the same sector or in the same industry. You can estimate, and once you know the exact amount, you can either deduct or consider it as sadaqah or as an advanced payment of zakah. What is the applicable zakah rate for companies? This is something that we discussed in the beginning. Okay. Okay, what if the management pays zakah? In this case, if the investor who holds if you hold it for long term, then you don't have to pay zakah. However, if you trade it, then you have to cover the deficit. Let's say the amount, the zakah per share that the company has paid is $1 per share as zakah. However, because when you calculate it based on the market price, the zakah amount is $1.5. So in this case, you have to pay an additional 50 cents for each share that you own. And this is an example. Can I reduce the amount of zakah I have to pay by the amount of taxes I pay? No, because zakah is has different rulings, purposes, and calculations and recipients. Unless the country itself, I mean the government, offer this by rebate or by refund. I see Adil getting closer to the camera. Okay. I mean, there are other aspects. Maybe if we can share this, or maybe if, I mean, in the Q&A, we have one section that we completely left out regarding Zakat al-Fitr. If we receive questions regarding that, we will revisit that. Otherwise, I mean, I hope that was beneficial, although it didn't cover everything. هذا وإن أصبت فمن الله وحده سبحانه وتعالى، وإن أخطأت فمن نفسي ومن الشيطان. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh Mishal. Sorry to rush you. I know it's a very comprehensive topic and it's difficult to cover it in the short amount of time that we have. So as our Sheikh mentioned, if anyone has any questions, if there's anything that's unclear, then feel free to drop your questions in the chat box and we'll address them at the end. Also, I mean, I might as well take this time to mention that at Adl Advisory, we do offer corporate zakat calculation services. So if there was something from this presentation that was unclear, or if a person still needs assistance in calculating their zakat, then you can reach out to us at Adl Advisory through any of our social media channels or through email. Okay, with that, inshallah, we can move on to our next esteemed speaker, Sheikh Zahid Mateen. So for a brief introduction, inshallah, Sheikh Zahid holds a master's in information technology with a focus on IT project management and a bachelor's in computer information and electronics engineering from IIUM. He is a serial collector of certifications. He is a certified project management professional, certified Sharia advisor and auditor from AOFI, certified blockchain associate, certified Zakat manager, certified Waqf manager, certified Sharia standard specialist, and even a a Six Sigma yellow belt. And he is the group product manager at Ethis and co-founder of GlobalSadaqah. So inshallah today he will be sharing with us some of the issues and challenges in zakat collection and distribution. And we will also be exploring a very interesting case study of GlobalSadaqah, which is a very well-known Islamic social finance platform. And inshallah, with his practical experience, we can learn more about zakat collection and distribution, the other side of zakat. So without further ado, inshallah, Zahid, please, over to you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Right, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hayakallah Mashaykh. Jazakallah khair for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with Adl Advisory and of course Sheikh Mishal. Long time indeed. We've had a quick run through of our zakat calculation, and this is very, very important. So Jazakallah khair for that. And that's one of the main points that I wanted to touch on before we begin is when we're working in the industry, like even if you're talking about the Islamic finance industry, you'll be surprised to know that we've had people, we've worked with them, and in their mind, zakat is just the charity that they give on every Friday. So you'd be surprised also that people, they've been living in Muslim countries for a very long time. They've been earning in millions. They are sitting on companies that earn millions, but they don't pay zakat because their understanding of zakat is flawed. So as a Muslim Ummah right now, like Adl Advisory is there and we have other organizations, it's our responsibility to make sure that we understand, we educate ourselves on zakat. And zakat is a pillar of Islam, right? So it's a farida, it's a fard, it's an obligation upon all of us to learn about zakat at our individual level of what we are liable to pay. And at the same time, we need to make sure that those around us, our community, is also empowered with this knowledge. Because if people are not paying zakat, it does hinder or let's say harm even the balance or the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for us in the society. So just taking a quick track back of who we are, what we do. So GlobalSadaqah, we were established in 2018. We were an award-winning CSR Zakat Waqf management platform. We have donors from over 86 countries globally, alhamdulillah. And one of our main aim is to convert beneficiaries into benefactors. So this is again one of the problem statements that we're trying to solve, because what we see in the market is people become dependent on your sadaqah life cycle, if you want to call it, right? Like, you know that every month somebody is going to come, they're going to give me X amount of money, so I don't need to work. So this is something we are trying to alleviate at a grassroots level. We are trying to work with different partners who are not just going out into the market and giving out charity, but we are trying to support those events, those kind of programs where people are actively empowering the asnaf or the poor and the needy into helping them set up businesses, becoming self-sufficient, breaking off from the charity dependency, right? So that's one of the things that we are working on. Another major factor that we're working on is that we want to work with only verified partners, and we want to bring transparency to the whole charity ecosystem, right? Now, why do I say this? So if we take the famous saying, Medina wasn't built in a day. It took 13 years of all the hard work of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba in Makkah. They were laying down strong foundations. They struggled against a rigid system. And then they had another 10 years of work to do in Medina. And they built upon those foundations that they had already studied, let's say, in Makkah, right? Before they were ready to go out and take the world. And once they were ready, once all the systems were in place, you've done your education of Makkah, you've done your practical internship, if you want to call it, in Medina. Now you're ready. And then we look at what the Sahaba did. They took over the world from Spain, Al-Andalus in the west, to China in the east, France to the north, Sudan in the south. The Muslim Ummah was all over the place, right? We were growing. Now, this analogy, the reason I give it is we want to bring it back to Zakat. Zakat, and not just Zakat, you have Zakat, you have Awqaf, another neglected field, and you have Qard Hasan. So these are like a blueprint of success that Allah has given us. Allah has given the Ummah these things, but we are not utilizing it properly. Once we educate ourselves, we need to educate ourselves about what these things are, why it's necessary. So these are not just some things that we see in the textbook. These are things we need to implement in our daily lives. If we look at the Ottoman Empire, they had awqaf for the most interesting of things. Like, this is something we should look into and read further. They had awqaf for single mothers. They had awqaf for orphans. And again, awqaf, we don't talk about just building masajid and building wells, right? We're talking about generating wealth. And all of this is coming to empower people. Then you have the zakat collection, you have zakat disbursement, and this is, you're also alleviating people from just taking money and bringing them into the society. You're uplifting them, you're giving them izzah. So these are things that we need to look at, right? And the major factor that we are seeing in the industry right now is, again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, the lack of education. Once you have the lack of education, we are not following this blueprint. I'll give you a practical example. Like in Malaysia, we have certain communities. Well, I won't take the name of the nationalities, you can guess. But they have something like a mix of a zakat or a Qard Hasan pool, where they say, okay, you have the grades, you have got good grades in your school life, and now you want to go to MIT, you want to go to any of the Ivy League schools, we will give you the money for it. Your education is going to be sponsored, your living there is going to be sponsored, everything is going to be sponsored. What do we want in return? I don't want money to come to me as an individual. Once you're done studying, you come back, you join this community, you pay back into this pool that you took from, and you send the next person forward, right? So these communities, and these are non-Muslim communities, they have taken the concept of zakat, they've taken the concept of waqf, they've taken the concept of takaful, they've taken the concept of qard hasan, and you see how they are now leading, and they're growing as a community. So this is a proof, what do you call it? A proof of concept, as we say in the technical world, that these are things that work. These are not just some black and white things that we look at in our textbooks that, oh, zakat, oh, sadaqah. No, these are things that we are supposed to actively do. And understanding them is one of the keys of bringing success to the ummah overall. Like I'll give you another example of just the potential that we have of zakat. I was reading a report by the World Bank and the Islamic Research and Training Institute that comes under the Islamic Development Bank of Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And they had estimated that the global potential of zakat was somewhere around 550 to 600 billion, billion with the B, billion US dollars per year. Per year, 600 billion. And if you're looking at just the official zakat institutions worldwide, they're collecting only 10 to 15 billion. There's a major deficit. Like, where is the money going, right? And if you're looking at, again, IDB's report on this, zakat in Indonesia alone is somewhere around 16 billion, which is, I think, what, 217 trillion Indonesian rupiah, right? Now, you come to another report by University of Birmingham. The global value of zakat is estimated to range from 200 billion to 1 trillion. Now, this time, trillion with a T. Even if we come to the lowest of this amount, which is 500 billion, that is a mind-boggling amount. That amount is enough to eradicate world hunger, poverty. So many things can be eradicated. But now the question is, where on earth is this money going? Like, again, just to put this numbers that we just mentioned into a bit of perspective, the size of the zakat economy right now is potentially equivalent to the GDP of the country of Turkey or the country of Saudi Arabia. That is the amount of zakat that's going out every year. And we're not even talking about the zakat, let's say that's our mothers and sisters, they're giving off to family members, or it's not in an organized sector. We are talking about actual collection of zakat. So if you're looking at zakat, the rough equivalent would be that zakat as a whole is like the 17th largest economy in the world. That's the potential of zakat we have. So that's the major picture that I want to highlight, that zakat, our 2.5% is someone's 100%. So we should really make the effort. Now that we are understanding the potential of zakat, it's at an individual level, community level, even national level. Zakat can change lives. It can even change countries. That's the potential of zakat, right? And we're not even talking about the awqaf, qard hasan, and the rest of the amazing things that the Sharia has given us. Right. So that's the starting part that I wanted to touch on, which is the potential that we have of zakat. Now, once you think of the amount, you're like, okay, we have 500 billion. Where is the money going? Because if the money was actually being utilized, I mean, we would be not on Mars. We don't go to Mars, but we would be somewhere like great at this point, because that money can change lives. This brings us to the dark reality of the mismanagement of zakat funds. So we have educated ourselves about zakat. We have learned about how to calculate our zakat. And now it's the responsibility of us as users, as people, as students or practitioners in the field, to also now see how we are disbursing our zakat. There are multiple issues when it's coming to the disbursement of zakat. I'll touch on 2-3 points today, not too many, because otherwise we'll be sitting here for the whole month of Ramadan. One of the issues that we need to look at is that not everything is zakatable. Because now I'm going to talk also from the responsibility of us as a zakat payer, that not everything is zakatable. Nowadays, you go online, you see many platforms, many people sending out WhatsApp messages, and in the end, you'll see something that says, oh, this is zakat eligible. We are accepting zakat funds. Not everything is zakat eligible. And this is again why educating ourselves on zakat is very important. We were doing an analysis of a few platforms, and then we realized that some of them, they had marked campaigns to be zakat eligible, where it's a picnic. It's kind of a picnic where I'm going to walk from one point of the city to another point of the city to raise awareness of a cause. And they had marked it zakat eligible, and people who were giving their zakat in the thousands of dollars to this campaign. None of the 8 categories would fit walking in the garden for raising awareness. It doesn't fall under the category of asnaf anywhere. So now the people who have put up these campaigns, they are taking money from the ummah. They are going to be questioned, because that's an amana. Collecting zakat or even discussing or facilitating zakat is an amana. End of the day, we have to be very clear about that. Such people are going to be questioned. And us, as the people who are paying the zakat to these bodies, we will also be questioned. Like, how can you give zakat without doing your due diligence to something that's clearly not zakatable? You cannot just say, oh, I saw it was written zakat eligible, so I just gave away my money. No, we have to make sure that we are doing our due diligence. We are going to, like, you have Adl Advisory here, you have other advisories. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah tells us, if you don't know about something, you need to go out, you need to ask. Ask before you do. Look before you leap, right? Zakat is an obligation. So we need to make sure we are well educated on how we are giving our zakat, right? That's point one. Point two now comes is another major factor that we're looking at in the industry is your responsibility as a donor. It does not end the minute you have just donated your zakat. Let's say I'm running XYZ platform and somebody just comes and gives their zakat to me, or I'm the zakat payer rather. I just give the zakat to a platform and I think my zakat is done. No, the mashayikh or the imams in the field of zakat, they would tell us that your zakat, the obligation is not lifted from your shoulders till the zakat actually reaches the asnaf. You cannot just give the money to your agent, in this case, the platforms who we give the zakat to their agents. The liability is lifted from our shoulders only and only when zakat reaches the end beneficiaries, the asnaf. So this is very important, that now when you are looking for ways of giving your zakat, of disbursing your zakat, you give it in places where it is very clear, it is very transparent on how the zakat reaches the beneficiaries. You, as the zakat payer or the zakat donor, should be getting receipts of transfer. You should be getting updates of how the money reached the asnaf, when the money reached the asnaf, how much money reached the asnaf. So now you know that, okay, now my liability is done. Now, this is a second point. Third point related to this is that you also need to now look at hidden fees or hidden charges when it comes to zakat. Now, for example, I have $100 in zakat. I pay $100 onto a platform, but that platform is going to take $10 as admin fees. Then they're going to take another $5 for transport fees. Then $3-4 is going to go to the payment gateways for another transfer to whichever country the zakat is going to. All of this is being taken from your zakat money. And that's not what the money is supposed to be for, because these things are not necessarily zakatable. Not every person can take a percentage from your zakat as an amil. So if you're giving your zakat to platforms, either make sure that they are an amil zakat, yani they're people who are verified or who can actually collect zakat, or you give a top up. So let's say if I have $100 and I know that usually platforms will take around 10% to 15% as charges to facilitate this whole zakat onto the platforms. So I give 115, I give $120 instead of the 100. So I know that I'm safe overall. At the end of the day, the money that I'm supposed to give to remove that obligation or the liability that I have of zakat actually reaches the people as a whole amount and it doesn't get deducted. Because if the amount is deducted, for example, let's say if only $80 reaches the end asnaf, $20 is still a liability on my shoulder. It's still an obligation that I, who am now zakat, yani, I've hit the nisab, I've hit the hawl, it's still on my shoulders. I have to pay it off. And if I don't pay off those $20, I will be questioned. Right. So this is something, again, very, very important that we need to look at. One of the last points, I think I'll keep it short because I'd rather leave more questions for people to trouble Mishal. We need more Zakat questions here today because we have a lot of issues. A major thing that we need to look at when we come to Zakat disbursement is transparency. So we discussed about checking the fees. We discussed about proof. We looked at receipts. So this is very, very important. Again, we're talking about Sadaqah in general, but Zakat is even more sensitive than Sadaqah. We need to be very, very clear on how the Zakat is being disbursed, collected, and given to asnaf. Sometimes what we're seeing right now, and this is just in the last 1 or 2 weeks, that we've had discussions in certain countries or certain organizations where people were talking about collecting zakat for supporting political campaigns. And it doesn't make sense. Like, we have people who are on the road, they're homeless, they're dying, they don't have food to eat, and we're utilizing zakat funds for the most randomest of things, right? So if we are in the industry as practitioners, or even if we are in the industry or outside the industry as people who pay zakat, we need to make sure that we are asking the right questions to our masajid, to our institutions, on how the zakat is being used. And we see this when you're working with the different organizations, be it at a corporate level or government level also, that there is a lot of zakat collection happening. And now when zakat collection happens, people ask questions, okay, how do we utilize the zakat funds? The simple answer is you give it to the asnaf. But no, we don't want to hold the year like this. We want to hold the year like this. Some of the time we are investing it in random places, or we are cooking up new methodologies on how we are utilizing the zakat. So the bottom line that we're trying to highlight here is don't experiment with your zakat. Understand the gravity or the importance of the pillar of Islam that zakat is. Now, if we want to experiment different structures of how we can, let's say, work on different programs or how we can help certain groups of people, Allah has given us awqaf, Allah has given us qard hasan, Allah has given us sadaqah. We can use all of these avenues to help different communities, right? We shouldn't be playing with zakat or zakat funds as a whole to make sure that, okay, we have a larger pool of zakat as compared to our sadaqah, so we're going to use zakat for XYZ. So this is something that we need to be very, very careful of how the zakat is being used, right? And this is our responsibility as a community and as an individual to always ask these questions. How zakat is being used, why it's being used for certain projects, and at the end of the day, is it actually reaching the beneficiaries? So these are a few things we wanted to discuss or highlight today from our side, from the industry perspective that we are seeing on the ground, be it from an educational perspective, the lack of it rather, or the misunderstandings that people have, or with regards to the disbursements and how there are problems from a donor perspective as well as platform perspective, how we need to be careful about certain things, and then also about overall zakat usage, right? So we've touched on these 5 topics. So inshallah, maybe if we have another chance, we'll discuss deeper into each of the 5 different topics that we've touched on for now. So yeah, I think we would like to conclude with that. Jazakallah khair again for today. And back to Adil. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakumullah khairan, Sheikh Zahid, for opening up our eyes to the realities of zakat collection and disbursement, and highlighting the importance of being aware of these things when paying our zakat. Okay, so we have a few questions in the chat box that we can address, inshallah. Um, I'll just read them out, and inshallah, either of you can answer if it's relevant, inshallah. Okay, the first question I believe is already answered, so we can skip that. Second question, can we donate something earned through haram? If yes, can you elaborate? So I believe, Brother Mishal, this was meant for you because there was a discussion on donating haram wealth to charity.
طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The ruling is that it's not that you can, it's you must. And the thing that you have to keep in mind is that you're not doing this as a as a recommended act, or as you're not really donating. You're purifying yourself from this wealth, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't accept إن الله طيب لا يقبل إلا طيبا. Allah doesn't accept something that you have earned impermissibly. And therefore, whatever impermissible earning or items that you have, you must dispose of them. This is the accurate word to use. And you must. It's not something that you have a choice to do. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, next question. Okay. This is, I believe, regarding trade assets. The question is selling price common among all the four schools of fiqh, using the selling price for zakat?
لا أدري.
Okay, we'll move on then, inshallah. It's something, I mean, inshallah, we can look into and perhaps get back to this brother, inshallah.
This is based on Ayofi. It's not based on one madhab, and Ayofi is not doesn't doesn't prefer one madhab over another. Ayofi is I mean it gathers top scholars in the field, top scholars in the subject matter, and then they discuss and they come out with a standard on the subject matter, zakah in this instance. However, if I'm not sure. I mean, based on like the rulings that I've mentioned, I don't have full knowledge of each rule, whether it's based on one madhab or another, or if it's like something by ijma' or ittifaq, or it's something that is by one madhab. So this is, I mean, for all rulings that I've mentioned.
If I could just jump in for a minute here, just to touch on what Mishal said. OFE's entrance into the market right now is something very, very welcome, because we have different madahib across different lands, and not every land that the Muslims are living in, they have an Islamic government to take care of it, right? So you cannot always implement the fiqh that you're reading or that you're learning. So now with OFE coming into the picture, it has helped standardize a lot of the rules or the best practices or what's practical, because not all the stuff that is there in many of the books of the madahib, it's practical today, or at least not practical based on the system that we have today. It might have been practical maybe 50 years ago, but OFE coming in has helped standardize a lot of the processes. It has helped visualize a lot of our fiqh rules and how we can do certain contracts, how we can fulfill certain of our obligations. So it has united, or it's trying to unite the ummah on something that majority of the scholars at least agree on, so that if we are sitting in Malaysia or we are sitting, let's say, in Saudi Arabia, then somebody in Japan or Africa, they don't have issues in understanding how we are working. So we are all united together across an understanding that everyone is good towards, or we understand or like it. Right? I just wanted to jump in with that.
Good.
Thank you, Jazakallah. Okay, we have one question here. Will these presentations be shared via email? The slides, I believe, will not be shared. However, this entire webinar is being recorded and will be shared to the registered participants, as well as it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well. Okay, we have one question from Guinea. If someone has outstanding debts but also savings, should they pay zakat or prioritize paying off their debts?
Okay. Now I would assume I'm not sure the amounts for each, but if the savings or if the debts that you must pay now covers all of your savings, then you shouldn't pay zakat. You should pay off your debts. If this is for current liabilities, for liabilities that you have to pay now to either حقوق الله or حقوق العباد. So even if it's a debt or liability that is based on religious obligations, such as, for example, kafara or previous zakah, then you prioritize this and you don't have to pay zakah for the current year. You have to pay off your debts first, and then if after paying off your debt, the savings still reaches nisab, then you have to pay zakah for that.
Okay, next question. How can we create awqaf in a Western country? And I know it's easier for a country under common law. The example of France, we are in civil law. So how can we create awqaf?
I mean, this is a very difficult yet interesting questions. We have Mashaykh for the last few decades who've been working on this. And it's always best to reach out to the Mashaykh who are already there on the ground to get more knowledge about this matter. But as I said, again, from our side, we need to focus on the educational aspect of this first. When we speak to people on the ground, even here in Malaysia, or we've spoken to even those in the Western countries, the mentality is that waqf means masjid, waqf means wells, and that's pretty much it. And when we tell them, okay, no, waqf can be profit generating, revenue generating, and then that money can be utilized to help the people, it doesn't sit right with many people. They don't just seem to understand that waqf can generate money, or rather, waqf should generate money. So this is something that we need to work on at an individual level first to educate ourselves and the people around us that awqaf can be, or what are the types of awqaf, right? If they're generating money, how is the money being used, etc., etc. That being said, we do have awqaf in these places where people have come together, they have put money, they have bought, let's say, an apartment building, and the person who owns the land, see now, there's a legal ruling from the Sharia perspective, and then there's the legal ruling of where you are staying, the country, the legal or the civil law of where you are staying, right? So the niyyah of the person who owns this plot of land, he has said in his heart that I'm doing work for this plot. And now all the money that comes from the apartments, from the building, it's being utilized to help the Muslims. It's being utilized to educate the Muslims who are short of money. So all of this stuff happens. Of course, it's an unofficial waqf because you're living in a Western country that doesn't recognize this. But if you're raising it to a national level, you have many awqaf even in the West, just that they are not called so. If you look at the endowment of Oxford, or you look at the endowment of these universities, they run into billions of dollars. And that's how think tanks are produced. That's how many of the policies are influenced, because these endowments and these universities or these different organizations, they if they power a lot of these initiatives that are being done. So we start small. We start at an individual level. We go to a community level. When the community is strong, we see that money is being raised. Without a doubt, the legislators or your government at hand will also take note. And then you can raise the topic of, okay, this is what we want to do. We want to establish an endowment. So different countries, different rules. So as I said, we go back to speaking to the scholars on the ground, because they would know best on how to tackle and approach this subject. Allahu Akbar.
Okay, we have another question. Can you give your zakat to a private Muslim school in France as fi sabilillah due to the Islamophobic systemic pressure?
One of those controversial questions. No, okay, so I'll be the spoil sport in this, that fi sabilillah in the industry right now has been one of the most overused categories of asnaf. Anytime anyone wants to use zakat funds, they just tag it as fi sabilillah and they use it for whatever. Now, classically, fi sabilillah was used for going out into the path of Allah, striving for the Muslims. Now, we do have certain scholars who allow it even today as fi sabilillah for propagating the message of Islam, supporting the Muslims, etc., etc. But if we start stretching the limits of fi sabilillah to a point where anything and everything is game, as they say, then it defeats the purpose of zakat. I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer. not my place to give you a yes or no answer. Again, speak to the Mashaykh on the ground in France to see what they say, what they rule on this. But I just want to highlight the point that I mentioned when I was speaking earlier. Don't play with zakat funds. We have sadaqah, we have all these other alternatives that the Sharia has given us to support our schools, to support these initiatives. Tap into those resources and use the zakat where it's most needed right now. That will be the answer, inshallah, and you can refer to the Mashaykh on the ground.
Okay. Okay. This is more of like a personal question, I guess. What can I do if I want to be certified in zakat and waqf? I
There
guess
are
our serial certification collector will know best.
there are many organizations. So now it also depends on what level you're looking at. If you're looking at just for a personal level, you have just YouTube videos is fine if you want to educate yourselves. But if you're looking for certifications, then you have, let's say, Netversity under IBF. Those were one. INSEF does a few, and in UAE you have a few. So it depends on what exactly you're trying to get certified in, right? Because Zakat and Waqf also have different levels when it comes to certifications. One is just your basic 101. Then you have certifications on managing the Zakat, managing the Awqaf, getting into the disbursement. So it depends on your level of interest and what you're looking for. If you have further questions, feel free to drop me a message later on LinkedIn or wherever, and we can discuss from there. Inshallah, I'll be happy to help.
Okay, we just got another question. In a country without an official system of zakat collection, how can it be ensured that zakat is properly distributed to those who need it most?
All right. This is an interesting question, and this is, I guess, the case with most of the Muslim communities around the world, because not everyone is lucky enough, like let's say Malaysia, Indonesia, or these countries which have a very robust collection of zakat or disbursement of zakat. But it goes back to how strong your community is, and it goes again back to the education part that we mentioned, that people need to know how they're calculating the zakat, how they're disbursing the zakat. Now, once we know who the zakat is intended to, then it's easy to track, because if you're talking, let's say, about countries which don't have a zakat collection or disbursement body, these are usually Muslim minority countries or maybe even the Western countries right now. You have fundraisers every Ramadan. You might be seeing fundraisers happening even now. People are giving zakat in the thousands and in the millions. But now that you have educated yourself, you have to go forward. You ask these organizers or the platforms where you're giving the zakat to, who are the beneficiaries? How is the zakat being given to them? Which category of asnaf that they fall under? So these are questions that we need to ask to the authorities. And for sure, they would already have set down answers to these questions, because you don't just come to public not being prepared. So we need to ask them that. We need to be very transparent. So let's say you've raised $10,000. How was this utilized? Were there any charges? Were there any fees involved from you as the admin, platform, organization, whoever it is? Who were the beneficiaries? When was the money transferred? How was it transferred? What type? When I say type, I mean, was cash given to these people, or was something bought and given to them, the equivalent amount? So all these questions when we ask, so it's like a supply and demand kind of a situation. The more questions you ask, the more strict or the more careful or cautious that the organizations and the platforms, they have to become, because they know that if we take the money tomorrow, our donors are going to question us. If we just give the money and forget, then they're like, khalas, yani no one's asking, we just use the money for what it is. So the more accountable we hold ourselves, the more accountable we will hold the organizations. So yeah, that's the easiest way. Ask questions, ask for transparency, ask for proofs. And we have technology nowadays, like we have blockchain, we have so many things that we can uh, look into to make sure that zakat is actually and properly being disbursed to the poor. And when I say blockchain, I don't mean you get the poor on the blockchain. By the usage of blockchain means that the end-to-end transfer of money, receipts, how and when the money was transferred, to whom it was transferred, bank details, all of that is very transparent. It cannot be tampered with, it cannot be played with. The audits, all of this can be checked by the public, and it's open for everyone to look into. So these are things we can start off with to make sure that the zakat is reaching the people who are in need.
Okay, thank you both very much. It seems we've reached the end of our questions. And
Yeah. Just before we finish, I've spoken a lot about the education part, and Mishal at the start mentioned 3 resources. So I'd like to ask everyone to look into those 3 resources for educating ourselves on zakat primarily. And from our side on Global Sadaqah, we also have an ebook that we have prepared called Zakat Made Easy. I'll drop the link in the chat so inshallah everyone can benefit as well. It's a gift from our side to everyone this Ramadan. So feel free to have a read, share it with friends and family. And we have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said that the one who guides someone to good is as though he gets the same rewards, right? So benefit inshallah. And if you have any doubts, any comments, feel free to reach out to Adl Advisory to clarify your doubts on zakat, or feel free to drop us a message at Global Sadaqah as well.
inshallah, inshallah. I think we do have one more question. There's someone who just is raising their hand. Please, you can go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I want to ask a question about the zakat receiver. Let's say like during Caliph Umar, there was no one who like they find someone to give zakat. Means all people they are well, they can afford their basic needs. So for now, people they give zakat, but people who receive zakat, they remain to be zakat receiver forever. So what the solution to be taken in order for the zakat receiver to not receive zakat forever? So what the solution, and what the solution was be taken during the Caliph Umar? Thank you. And the second question is, for instance, like I have a job, then I receive salary. Let's say like I keep some percent to go for hijab. Then the amount for the salary I receive, it already reached the nisab and hawl, but I used to keep the percent of zakat. So which one I should keep priority for going to hijab or to remain to give zakat, which will reduce the amount of going to hijab? It's only that. Thanks so much.
Mishal, you want to take the second question first?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So if you're saving to spend on something, not the distinction is that you're not saving to pay off debt, you're saving to spend on something that includes marriage, education, and Hajj as well. If you're saving these savings, you have to pay zakah on these savings, as long as you haven't spent them, as long as they haven't become a debt, and they don't become a debt before you are enrolled in one of the Hajj campaigns, and you have to pay for this amount. So if you're saving for 3 to 4 years, during these 3 to 4 years, you have to pay zakah on all of your properties, including these savings. Allahu alam. I mean, I hope that
Is that answer clear, sister, for you?
But also to go Hajj is compulsory also. So I should keep the saving for going hijab. So if it's like that, it's okay. Like
Hajj is compulsory when you have means to do it, and zakah is compulsory when you have property. If it doesn't become a debt and it's always you have a deficit, you can't afford Hajj, then you don't have any sin on this. Because you couldn't save up for Hajj. But that's the ruling. Wallahu alam.
okay, thanks so much.
Right. To touch on the first question that you asked, that it's basically about zakat dependency, right? So this is a question that we need to focus on from the mindset of the people. And that's why we should also focus on supporting those zakat projects that are working to help the people, not just by giving them zakat one-off, but by also helping change them from beneficiaries to benefactors. But we have to be very, very careful here, because what happens at times is we are utilizing zakat funds in places where it shouldn't be used. We did propose a certain setup to a government organization a few months ago. I'll explain it here. It's quite interesting. We have sadaqah funds and we have zakat funds. Zakat should be given to help people, let's say the fuqara and the masakin, to make sure that they have enough food, enough money to cover their rent, or enough money to cover whatever expenses that they want. Yani it's their money, end of the day. They get to decide how to utilize the money. And then we can use these sadaqah funds, or we can use the normal funds that we have as a qard hasan to these asnaf. And we tell them, okay, you know what, we're going to give you $2,000. You have a time period of 1 year, and we want you to give us back this money. Now, at least in Malaysia, that amount of money is enough for people to start a small business. It could be a food stall, it could be buying and selling some small stuff. And we have seen this work with people with just 1,500 ringgits or 2,000 ringgits. They have set up food stalls and they ended up making a few thousand ringgits a month. So you've kept zakat separate enough to give them the money to satisfy their immediate needs. Then you have given them a qard hasan, which is a benevolent loan to help them get started, like a seed fund to set up the business. And they're going to give the money back to you that you can then roll over to help other people. And it's not sadaqah, right? It's qard hasan. So they have to pay it back to you. So with that thought process in mind, that this is money that I have to give back. And if I don't give it back to them, I might get blacklisted. I might not get future support. That will motivate them to get up and work, to get up and make sure that, okay, I'm not just sitting at home and taking money. They will then work, and you have a deadline of 1 year, you pay back the money. So there are different scenarios that we are trying to look into. And there are many mashayikh who are working on the ground. There are many organizations who are working on the ground to make this a reality. But if the mentality is very, very bad, that I'm just going to sit and earn, you then really can't do much. And this is where we as people should go on the ground and speak to these brothers, because we need to realize that asnaf, they're not digits on an Excel sheet. They are our brothers and sisters at the end of the day. So if you know that somebody is in this cycle, we can speak to them and motivate them that now that you have enough money to pay for your rent, you have enough money for this XYZ, why don't you look into trying to work here? Why don't you try looking to do this? We give them the motivation and we help them till they are turned from beneficiaries to benefactors. We can't off-put the blame just to the organizations or the government or the mashayikh. We also need to get involved, and we try to do our part, inshallah. I think this would be one of the few scenarios where we can try and experiment and try breaking that dependency cycle. Hope that answers your question.
Okay, thanks so much.
Okay, we have just reached the end of our time. Before we end off, I'd like to take this time to thank our speakers for their time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you both, accept all of your and all of our ibadat this Ramadan. I'd also like to thank the participants for joining, for sitting through this long webinar. Inshallah, if you enjoyed this webinar, then please continue to follow us on all of our social media platforms for any future updates for our future webinars and events. With that, inshallah, I think we can end off. Jazakumullah khairan again, everyone. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.